Hi everyone, it's great to be back at CSL. I also like to thank for the opportunity of the research fellowship that I had 2 years ago because it had a great impact on my PhD research that enabled me to include two further case study in the project. So before I joined Unity Lab, my work actually was more on the technical side, which I was working on designing data analysis models for urbanism use cases ranging from circular city and then energy simulations and using machine learning for multi-criteria analysis. But working on these use cases made me question what do we have to do if we want to scale up these projects or bring them to their target users? And that question triggered the research project that I then joined Unity to look into the process. So if we have the digital artifacts that we are developing with the tools, what is the operational environment and what is the network of actors and their actions that are actually shaping these projects? So the questions are who is involved in actually the process, and if we want to build digital twins collaboratively, how these projects are structured. So then I looked into 3 different labs and 4 different cases with different scales. One is the Green Twins project based in Finance Center for Smart Cities, 2 projects in CSL, including the CUT project and PACOM project, and then one based in AIT, which is actually not a university and a private research organization that's working on the infrared project. The research structure included 4 governance elements. Today, I will be talking about the business models of the projects. So looking at the business models, first the decision was that do we look into the business model of the organizations or the projects, especially if we have multi-stakeholder projects, so each of the organizations have different dynamics and business models. So the focus here was on the boundary of the projects. And with the elements within business models, we can look at value proposition. Why was this project started and what was the trigger for it? Who is involved in the collaborative network and how are the projects structured, and eventually the funding model that supports the project. In terms of value proposition, we saw that the Connected Urban Twins project actually has more of an ecosystem approach, which enables not only focusing on the technical part, but also focusing on the knowledge transfer and capacity building that is required for really successful implementation of digital twins. In the case of PACOM, it's a participatory tool that's used for participatory urban design. And the value proposition here was that how can we include further mediums for technological interaction? So how can we, for example, not only have digital screens, but also have touch tables, AR and VR tools to really increase the interaction of the users with the digital artifact. On the other hand, the Green Twins was really focused on the topic of integrating the green environment into the digital twins. So not only including the built environment, but also integrating a green infrastructure, which is usually missed in the urban digital models. And lastly, for infrared, they had a very technical focus. And the challenge was that sometimes the simulation models that we built, especially for environmental performance, the running time might take days or weeks even if the scale is the city scale. So their value proposition was that how can we use AI-driven models and build something that can reduce the time of the calculation for the urban digital twin. And looking at the value network, I think it's very impressive for the connected urban twins that they have not only multiple cities, but the number of total organizations involved not only included academic organizations, but public and also private sector. And for the PACOM, which was based in CSL as well, it was a smaller team with less than 10 people, but having a focus on the role that academia has in building digital twins. So with 2 different labs from HafenCity University and the University of Applied Sciences. In the case of Green Twins, it was also a larger scale project that not only included the municipalities taking role in the project, but the project being led by Caltech and Aalto University through the Finance City Smart Center. And for infrared, it was only AIT that was managing the project, but within AIT, the organizational structure is that they have multiple centers, and the lab, the City Intelligence Lab, whatever they develop is integrated within the same tool. So kind of the lab represents the tool that it provides. And looking at how the projects are further structured, I didn't want to go into the details because we also have presenters from each of the two of the projects here today. But with Connected Urban Twins, since they had an ecosystem approach, they divided into sub-projects that not only focus on the urban data platforms, but also focusing on the participation, how we can design the use cases, and have experimental research informing the way that we develop urban digital twins. With small-scale projects, we can see that, like, since the team can be organized based on project activities, we can see project design, project management, people that will be involved in technical development, and also project engagement of having people dedicated to activities that help them reach out to the public sector to see if the tools that they are developing could be helpful for the task that those organizations already have. And this not only informs the development process, but also raises awareness through public sector of how digital tools that are being developed in urban innovation labs can be useful for them. In terms of Green Twins, the project was structured based on what is going to be the output of the project. So there are two different tools being developed, and not only developing digital tools, but also focusing on establishing a hub that would be integrated into the organizational structure of the municipality in Tallinn, to have actually a physical space like the one that we are here in today, to really have its open doors for people that can come to the space, interact with the tools. So this shows that not only we need to focus on the digital aspect, but also looking at what is the enabling infrastructure within the city that enables engagement with the citizens. One interesting note was that in the initial phase, user research or like UX, UI focuses was not included in when project was being planned or the application was being prepared. But then realizing that if we want to provide digital tools for people that really want to interact with it, and that depends on the target user. Is it the citizen? Is it the architect that's designing the master plan? Is it the person in charge for participatory processes in the municipality? So like considering that who is going to be the target user of the tool, it's an important focus that should be involved in all of the projects. On the other hand, for infrared, they already knew that eventually the project is going to be a spin-off to shape a startup. So all the activities were going to eventually end in shaping that company. So they they organized themselves based on the phases, and they first started with experimentation with the models, and they also published about it. And then they were like, we need to create an interactive environment that we can host the models on, and that's what they focused on. So the software plugins and the web application. And then they were focusing on this transition from a research project to a spin-off company that's now called Infrared Cities. And while this technical development was happening, they were also engaging with students, for example, master students and PhD students, to interact with the tool, and then also kind of inform the design and development of the tool. And looking at the finance part, we can see that for the CUT project, not only the federal government supported the project, but the cities themselves contributed to funding the project. And for PACOM, it's part of the funding that CSL receives, and also the benefit that research funds in Germany and in general on the federal level that contributes for shaping the projects in innovation labs. The same approach of a funding model for Green Twins was true, that it had a total budget of around 1 million, and then Part of it was allocated from the fund that Caltech received from the Regional Development and European Commission. Comparison to these 3 projects to infrared, AIT fully funded the costs of the project, so there was no direct application that they applied to, and from the beginning they would know that like the project will go on as long as the development activities are needed, so they were not limited to a time frame, and that really helped the project to focus on what was important instead of having the challenge of the lab for looking for additional funding if the timeline of the development might not need the output that was required. And I think it was a successful process to support the innovation lab without a time frame, because they were able to actually spin off the company, and they were able to raise more than $1 million in their seed funding, and they are still applying for further funds. So the project not only evolves to a company, but also the lab itself can promote itself to a place that can have successful projects. So looking at the ecosystem, I think it's important that we consider business models not only for organizations, but also projects, because that would enable us to really focus on what each of the elements in the ecosystem need. What does the project need once the funding call is received, and then once the funding call has ended, and what if the project is delivered from the innovation lab to the municipality? So how will that project evolve? And then on the innovation lab, since they heavily rely on research funds, I think it's also important to see how we can rethink funding models for innovation labs to continue creating projects that can be not only research, but also practical. So there's also a lot of questions asked about what will happen next. That would be true for the organizations, for the projects, and also the PhD students that really have a core role in projects that are being developed in the innovation labs. Sorry. So I want to use this opportunity to reach out to recent PhD students or soon to be graduates to shape a collective to see that with the skills that we have developed, both technical and strategic, how can we contribute to innovation labs? How can we contribute to projects in public and private sector? And also invite public sector and private sector to really use these skills and capacities that the people that work on these projects have. Thank you very much.